It was a quiet afternoon at one of the city's most exclusive restaurants. Patrons were enjoying their meals, the soft clinking of cutlery blending with muted conversations. Outside, the sun reflected off polished glass windows, creating a calm, almost luxurious atmosphere. No one could have predicted that a single, unexpected incident would soon have everyone talking. Steven Seagal's wife had arrived to enjoy a simple lunch. Elegant but understated, she walked into the restaurant with a calm demeanor, expecting a peaceful meal. She had been here before, and though the place was strict about rules, she had never faced any trouble. But that day, the manager, a young, self-assured man known for his rigid policies and liberal approach to enforcing standards, noticed her immediately. For reasons that seemed trivial at first, the manager decided she could not stay. Perhaps it was the way she was dressed. Perhaps he simply wanted to assert authority. Whatever the reason, his tone was sharp and uncompromising. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I have to ask you to leave," he said. There was no discussion, no room for explanation. She tried to respond politely, hoping to resolve the misunderstanding. "I've been here before, and I haven't caused any issues," she explained calmly. But the manager wasn't having it. He waved dismissively, repeating his command. "I said you need to leave. Now." Her calmness didn't sway him. He stood rigid, pointing toward the exit as if the restaurant were his kingdom and she was trespassing. Patrons nearby began to notice the tension. Whispers started circulating. "Is he serious?" someone asked. "Why is he being so harsh?" Another customer shot a glance toward the manager, but no one intervened. It was shocking, but also strangely compelling. She felt a mix of confusion and embarrassment, but mostly frustration. Being treated unfairly in public is always humiliating, and there's a sharp sting when authority figures misuse their power. She complied, leaving the restaurant quietly, trying to maintain dignity, even as her cheeks burned with anger. What she didn't know, however, was that Steven Seagal was about to learn what had happened, and when he did, the story would take a turn that no one, not even the arrogant manager, could have imagined. Because sometimes, calm and control are more powerful than anger. Sometimes, respect is demanded not with yelling, but with presence, influence, and quiet authority. And the next day, the patrons, the staff, and the city itself would witness something unforgettable. What happened next completely shocked everyone standing there. After being forced to leave the restaurant, Steven Seagal's wife walked out with a mixture of frustration and disbelief. The afternoon sun reflected off the polished pavement as she tried to compose herself. Patrons inside whispered quietly, exchanging looks of confusion and shock. A manager's harshness had turned a simple lunch into a scene no one would forget anytime soon. As she left, she tried to rationalize it. Perhaps the manager was just having a bad day. Perhaps it was a misunderstanding. But deep down, she knew there was more to it. This wasn't just about rules. It was about arrogance, about a sense of power misused, about someone trying to assert dominance over another person for no justifiable reason. Meanwhile, back at home, Steven Seagal was finishing his morning workout. Calm, focused, he checked his phone and saw a message from his wife explaining what had happened. The text was short but clear. "The manager kicked me out. I didn't do anything wrong. I just wanted to have lunch." At first, he didn't react dramatically. Steven Seagal was known for his calm demeanor, his ability to remain unshaken in tense situations. He took a deep breath, processing the information carefully. But there was a spark of determination in his eyes, a quiet, unshakable resolve. He knew this was not just about his wife. This was about respect, fairness, and making sure no one, no matter how influential they might think they are, could treat someone else unjustly. He began to plan, but not with anger. There would be no shouting, no public confrontation, no chaos. He wanted to handle this with the kind of authority and composure that only someone like him could command. Every move had to be deliberate, precise, and impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, word about the incident had started to spread. Some patrons had taken discreet photos of the manager's harsh behavior. Others whispered about the audacity of forcing a guest to leave, wondering if anyone of influence would step in. The air in the city felt charged. Little did they know that the situation was about to escalate in the most extraordinary way. That evening, Steven made a few calls. He contacted a trusted assistant, explaining the situation in quiet, controlled tones. Plans were set in motion. But for anyone watching from the outside, it would appear as though nothing had happened, a calm, ordinary evening, masking an approaching storm. Patrons and staff at the restaurant continued their evening routines, oblivious to the approaching Rolls-Royce that would soon change everything. The tension of the previous day lingered in whispers and conversations, a reminder that arrogance and poor judgment often leave a lasting impression. And then, a thought crossed Steven's mind sometimes. The most powerful lessons are taught not with confrontation, but with presence. Influence and respect carry weight far beyond words. A subtle reminder can be more humbling than hours of argument. At this point, the story shifts to the viewers themselves. While the tension builds, the audience is invited to engage and imagine their own reaction. Have you ever seen someone treated unfairly by a manager? Like this? Tell me in the comments, and don't forget to mention which country or city you're watching from. I want to see where people from all over the world are following this story. By now, the anticipation is tangible. Viewers can feel the storm approaching. The city itself seems to hold its breath, waiting for the quiet authority of Steven Seagal to make its presence felt. Meanwhile, at home, Steven calmly reviews the plan. There will be no chaos, no dramatics, only a simple, unmistakable message. Respect is not optional. By the next day, the city will witness the arrival of a Rolls-Royce that would instantly shift power and attention, and the arrogant manager who thought he could dismiss someone without consequence would learn that some lessons cannot be ignored. Even as the night settles over the city, the energy is electric. Patrons and staff may not realize it yet, but the calm before the storm is the moment where the story begins to truly captivate. The tension builds, not with shouting, but with anticipation, as everyone waits for what comes next. And when it happens, no one will forget it. What happened the next day completely shocked everyone who had witnessed the incident, and would teach a lesson in respect no one expected. The night had settled quietly over the city, but inside Steven Seagal's home, a quiet storm was brewing. He sat in the study, the soft hum of the air conditioning the only sound accompanying the faint flicker of streetlights outside. On the surface, he was calm, almost meditative, but his mind was actively processing the events of the previous day. Steven had learned about what had happened to his wife, a minor misunderstanding that had escalated into outright disrespect by a liberal manager at a high-end restaurant. She had been asked to leave not because of anything she had done, but because someone had chosen to misuse their authority. The injustice stung, and Steven felt a quiet determination grow within him. Unlike many, Steven Seagal did not respond with blind anger. He was known for his calm, controlled demeanor, the kind of calm that commands respect without a single raised voice. And in this moment, that calm became his strategy. He knew that a reaction fueled by rage could tarnish the lesson he intended to teach. The goal wasn't to humiliate or attack, but to show that authority must be tempered with respect, and that arrogance often meets consequences. He leaned back in his chair and reviewed the situation. The manager had overstepped, not realizing who he had wronged. And now, it was time for a subtle but unmistakable reminder. Steven picked up his phone and made a series of calls. Each conversation was quiet, precise, and intentional. He wasn't shouting. He was orchestrating a plan that would speak louder than words ever could. Details were arranged, logistics, timing, and the unmistakable presence of his iconic Rolls-Royce. By morning, everyone involved would know that disrespect comes with consequences, without Steven needing to raise his voice. Even as plans were made, his thoughts were with his wife. He wanted her to know that she was supported, protected, and respected not through force, but through the power of calm authority. She had been wronged, and he intended to set things right, carefully and gracefully. Meanwhile, the city continued its nightly rhythm, unaware that the events of the next day would draw attention far beyond the restaurant walls. Patrons and staff had already shared stories and whispers from the previous afternoon. They wondered if anyone of influence would step in, but none could have imagined the subtle storm that was being planned. As Steven reviewed every detail, he thought about the nature of influence. True power doesn't scream. It doesn't rely on intimidation. It relies on presence, timing, and impact. By tomorrow, his message would be delivered not through confrontation, but through presence. The Rolls-Royce was more than just a car, it was a statement. a symbol of respect and influence that no arrogance could ignore. He also considered the reactions of those who might witness the event. Patrons, staff, and even bystanders would see that calm authority can be far more humbling than anger. The lesson was clear. Treat people with respect, because someone powerful may quietly be observing, ready to remind you of the value of dignity. But while the plan was underway, Steven wanted the audience, the viewers of the story, to imagine themselves in his position. The suspense builds here, allowing them to think critically. What would they do if someone disrespected a loved one? If this happened to you, would you confront the manager immediately, or let it go and plan your response carefully, like Steven did? Comment below. I want to know how you'd handle this situation. Back at home, Steven finalized the plan. The Rolls-Royce would arrive the next morning, a silent, undeniable symbol of his influence. There would be no shouting, no chaos, just presence, timing, and the undeniable message: respect is not optional. Throughout the evening, he remained composed. The calm before the storm was almost meditative, but beneath it, a pulse of anticipation grew. Staff, patrons, and city observers would soon witness an event that was about to become unforgettable, all because of careful planning, quiet confidence, and the power of presence. Steven also reflected on the lesson for the manager. Humility is often taught in unexpected ways, and the next day would be a perfect example. The arrogant manager would see firsthand that authority without respect is fragile, and influence combined with calm certainty can command attention like nothing else. By the time he went to bed that night, everything was in place. The city would awaken to a subtle but unforgettable lesson in respect, dignity, and the quiet power of someone who knows how to handle injustice without losing control. And when the sun rose the next day, the Rolls-Royce would arrive, turning heads, drawing attention, and leaving no doubt that disrespect, even if minor, carries consequences when met with strategic, composed authority. The anticipation was unbearable, but that's what made it unforgettable. Everyone involved, including the manager, would soon learn a lesson they wouldn't forget. The quiet before the storm is always the most tense, and tomorrow, that tension would explode into one of the most unforgettable moments of respect ever witnessed. The next morning, the city seemed ordinary at first glance. The sun glinted off the pavement, birds chirped faintly, and life appeared to move at its usual, predictable pace. Yet, in a quiet corner of the city, a story was about to unfold that would leave everyone present in awe. Inside the restaurant, staff were preparing for a busy lunch service. The manager, still smug from the previous day, went about his duties with confidence. He had no idea that the events of yesterday were about to come back in the most dramatic fashion. He assumed that no one of influence would notice such a minor incident after all. He told himself. It was just a guest, and she followed instructions. Outside, a faint hum began to grow in the distance. It was subtle at first, almost unnoticeable. Then the sound of an engine, smooth yet commanding, started to dominate the otherwise calm morning. Patrons and pedestrians looked up, curious. What was that unmistakable growl of a high-powered engine echoing through the city streets? As the hum grew louder, a glimmer of chrome appeared around the corner, followed by the sleek silhouette of a vehicle that seemed to command attention without a single word. It was a Rolls-Royce, iconic, polished, and unmistakably commanding. The sunlight reflected perfectly off its glossy surface, making it shine like a jewel rolling down the street. Whispers immediately rippled through the crowd. Is that? Could it be? Eyes widened as the vehicle approached, its presence almost theatrical. Everyone nearby could sense that something extraordinary was about to happen. Patrons paused mid-step, staff froze in place, and even the birds seemed to fall silent. The car slowed, gliding to a perfect stop in front of the restaurant. Its engine purred softly, the doors glinting in the sunlight. From inside, a calm presence emerged, Steven Seagal himself. Dressed impeccably, composed, and radiating quiet authority, he stepped out with an air that could not be ignored. Every movement was deliberate, controlled, and commanding. The manager, still inside the restaurant, caught sight of him immediately. His confident smirk faltered as recognition hit. He froze, eyes widening, his voice caught somewhere between shock and disbelief. He had dismissed a guest yesterday, never expecting that this same person's presence could literally arrive at his doorstep to command attention. Patrons and staff outside gasped collectively. Phones came out instantly, cameras clicking, recording every second. Some whispered, trying to confirm what they were seeing. "Is that Steven Seagal?" Others simply stared, stunned into silence. The Rolls-Royce itself seemed to symbolize more than wealth. It was a manifestation of presence, respect, and quiet authority. The tension was palpable. The restaurant staff watched from windows, unsure whether to intervene, flee, or simply observe. Patrons outside couldn't tear their eyes away. All attention was focused on the man who had turned a simple incident into an unforgettable moment of suspense. Steven walked slowly toward the entrance, his eyes calm, scanning the crowd but never wavering. Every step was measured. He didn't raise his voice, he didn't gesture aggressively, yet the room felt his influence the moment he appeared. The manager's previous arrogance was now replaced with an almost tangible panic. As Steven approached, the whispers grew louder. Patrons exchanged glances, some with excitement, some with admiration. They could feel that a lesson was about to be delivered, a lesson not through anger or confrontation, but through presence and authority. Even the manager, now pale and trembling slightly, realized that he had misjudged the situation entirely. This wasn't about power or control anymore. It was about respect, humility, and the quiet way someone can command attention without raising their voice. The Rolls-Royce had become more than a vehicle, it was a statement. And Steven, calm and composed, was the embodiment of that statement. The crowd could feel it in their bones. This was not just a man arriving in a car. This was someone ensuring that injustice, even minor, would not go unnoticed. For the patrons, the staff, and the few bystanders who had gathered, it was surreal. Time seemed to slow down as Steven stopped just outside the entrance. A deep, almost imperceptible inhale passed through the crowd. Phones recorded, whispers spread, and even the manager seemed frozen in disbelief. And then, the moment that everyone had been waiting for, Steven's first step toward addressing the situation. Calm, commanding, and poised, he prepared to confront the manager, but not with anger. Instead, he was about to teach a lesson in humility that would resonate far longer than any shouted words ever could. The calm before the confrontation is always the most powerful. And in this moment, everyone could feel it. The Rolls-Royce, the presence, and the quiet authority of Steven Seagal were about to leave a mark that no one would forget. The morning sun glinted off the polished surface of the Rolls-Royce, its engine purring softly like a predator waiting to strike. But Steven Seagal was no predator. He was calm, composed, and in complete control, a quiet storm in human form. Every step he took toward the restaurant was deliberate, measured, and charged with authority. Patrons outside paused mid-step, some holding their phones at the ready, recording this surreal moment for posterity. Inside, the manager was pacing nervously. His confidence from yesterday had evaporated like mist in the morning sun. The smug smirk that had been his armor was gone, replaced by an unmistakable sense of dread. He had dismissed a guest, confident in his authority, but now he was face-to-face figuratively, and soon literally, with someone who commanded respect without needing to raise a finger. Steven stepped onto the pavement, his eyes scanning the entrance. He did not shout. He did not gesture angrily. His mere presence altered the energy of the entire scene. Patrons whispered, gasped, and nudged each other. Some barely dared to breathe, as if disturbing the calm authority emanating from him might break the spell. The manager caught sight of him and froze completely. Recognition hit immediately. "No, it can't be," he muttered under his breath. His hands twitched nervously at his sides. The power dynamic had shifted in an instant. The man who had thought himself in control yesterday now understood very clearly that his arrogance would not go unchallenged. Steven approached the entrance slowly. With each step, the tension thickened. The patrons outside instinctively formed a small circle, giving him space, almost unconsciously acknowledging the quiet dominance he projected. Cameras were raised, phones recording every second, but even the technology seemed secondary to the palpable energy in the air. When he finally reached the manager, he paused. There was no yelling, no dramatics, no hint of physical intimidation. Instead, his calm voice, low and controlled, resonated in the space. "Yesterday," Steven began, "my wife was asked to leave. Not because she caused a problem, not because she broke any rules, but because someone decided to misuse their authority. That is unacceptable. The manager's throat went dry. He tried to stammer a response, but words failed him. The patrons leaned in subtly, sensing that this confrontation was about to teach a lesson far beyond any typical dispute. Steven continued, his tone even and firm. Respect is not optional. Authority does not give you the right to belittle, to dismiss, or to humiliate. Every action has consequences, and every word leaves an impression. The manager swallowed hard. Sweat formed at his brow. He realized that this wasn't a confrontation rooted in anger. This was a confrontation rooted in presence, composure, and undeniable influence. The Rolls-Royce had been only the first symbol. Steven's calm, unwavering authority was the real statement. Staff and patrons could feel it too. Whispers spread through the small crowd. He's teaching him a lesson without even yelling. This is incredible. Cameras continued clicking, capturing every moment as the tension stretched like a live wire. The manager finally found his voice, weak and apologetic. I'm sorry. I didn't realize. His words faltered, broken by fear and realization. Steven nodded, almost imperceptibly, acknowledging the apology. Good. Apologies are a start. But remember this. Respect must be given before it can be received. People notice when authority is abused, and consequences will follow, whether you expect them or not. The silence that followed was deafening. Patrons could almost hear the manager's ego deflating. They could see him shrink under the weight of quiet, undeniable truth. It was a lesson in humility delivered without chaos, a lesson far more effective than any shouting match could ever achieve. And then, just as the tension reached its peak, Steven took a small, deliberate step back, signaling that the confrontation was over. The manager, pale and humbled, could only nod. Patrons applauded softly, some letting out breaths they hadn't realized they were holding. Phones continued recording, capturing what would soon become a viral moment. The lesson was clear to everyone watching. Respect is earned, arrogance has consequences, and power wielded without wisdom is fragile. Steven Seagal had demonstrated that authority and calm resolve are more commanding than anger or intimidation. Even the patrons, who had initially been strangers to the situation, felt inspired. They had witnessed a masterclass in handling injustice, a quiet, strategic, and dignified response that left no room for misunderstanding. And for the manager, this day would forever be a reminder. A lesson in humility delivered not with rage, but with presence, timing, and quiet power. The kind that commands respect without demanding it. Sometimes, the most powerful confrontations aren't loud. Sometimes, they're measured, deliberate, and impossible to ignore. And in this moment, everyone knew exactly what that meant. The air outside the restaurant had shifted. Moments ago, tension had been tight. Palpable now. It hung differently, heavy with awe. Patrons and staff alike felt it. The quiet authority of Steven Seagal wasn't just intimidating, it was transformative. The manager, once confident and cocky, now stood frozen, his arrogance evaporating under the weight of truth. Steven's calm words from the confrontation still echoed in the minds of everyone present. Respect must be given before it can be received. People notice when authority is abused, and consequences will follow. The simplicity of the message contrasted with the intensity of the moment. It wasn't anger that delivered the lesson, it was presence, composure, and undeniable influence. The manager shifted nervously, realizing the magnitude of his mistake. His voice trembled slightly. I didn't realize. I'm sorry. But Steven didn't simply accept the apology. He paused, letting silence hang in the air, a weighty, instructive pause. Patrons could feel it. Humility was being taught not through harsh words, but through quiet authority. The manager's pride, once inflated, had been punctured by something far more subtle and powerful than shouting or punishment. As the crowd watched, some murmured softly, others gasped quietly. Phones continued recording, capturing the manager's complete transformation from arrogance to humility. Even strangers in the street had stopped to observe, drawn in by the story unfolding in real time. This wasn't just a lesson for the manager, it was a lesson for everyone watching. Steven, still calm, spoke again, his voice steady and commanding. Learn from this. Authority is not a shield to disrespect others. Every choice has consequences, even small ones. Treat people with dignity, and respect will follow naturally. The manager nodded repeatedly, now fully aware of how wrong he had been. His body language screamed submission. His usual air of superiority was gone. The Rolls-Royce, parked behind Steven, seemed almost symbolic now, a reminder that true power lies not in force, but in measured presence and thoughtful action. Staff outside the restaurant felt a mix of relief and awe. They had watched the power dynamic shift so dramatically that it was almost cinematic. What could have been an ordinary morning turned into a masterclass in authority and respect. Patrons began whispering among themselves. I've never seen anyone handle a situation like that without yelling. He didn't need to raise his voice, and yet the lesson landed perfectly. The manager, now humbled, looked around at the crowd. His mistakes were clear not just to Steven, but to everyone who had witnessed the confrontation. The weight of public scrutiny made his remorse visible. This was more than a personal lesson, it was a public accountability moment, delivered with precision. Steven didn't gloat. There was no smug satisfaction, no display of dominance beyond the presence he naturally exuded. Instead, he acknowledged the manager with a simple nod, demonstrating that humility and integrity are often more compelling than revenge or anger. The crowd's energy shifted from suspense to admiration. Patrons whispered, "That's incredible." Calm, powerful, and effective without aggression. Phones continued recording, capturing the manager's complete transformation, which would soon spread online. Even the restaurant staff, previously frustrated with the scene, began to understand the lesson in humility and respect. If you were in Steven's position, would you forgive the manager after witnessing this? Type yes if you believe in forgiveness, or no if you think he should face consequences. Let me know in the comments. The suspense and drama had reached its peak, but the story wasn't over. The humbling of the manager marked a turning point, the moment when quiet authority, composure, and strategic presence completely overpowered arrogance and disrespect. It was a lesson in power, humility, and timing that everyone would remember. Even the bystanders who had just come across the scene were captivated. Some whispered to each other, "This is more than a confrontation. It's a masterclass in dignity." Others nodded in agreement, clearly impressed by Steven's ability to maintain control without ever raising his voice. Finally, as Steven prepared to leave, the message was clear to everyone. Authority without respect is fragile. Humility is powerful. And sometimes, the most unforgettable lessons aren't taught with anger. They're taught with presence, poise, and unwavering calm. The manager, now humbled, would never forget this encounter. Patrons and staff would carry the memory of the Rolls-Royce, the quiet authority, and the lesson in respect long after the event had ended. And for the viewers following this story online, the lesson would resonate just as strongly. Composure, dignity, and timing often achieve what force and rage never can. Sometimes the most humbling moments aren't loud. Sometimes they're quiet, deliberate, and unforgettable, and in this moment, everyone watching could feel the full weight of that truth. By the time the day unfolded, the story of Steven Seagal, his Rolls-Royce, and the humbled manager had already begun to spread across the city. Patrons who had witnessed the event shared videos on social media. Staff, still buzzing from the dramatic morning, uploaded snippets to their platforms. Within hours, the incident that had started as a private lesson in respect became a viral sensation. The internet lit up. Views, likes, and shares multiplied rapidly as people everywhere watched the moment unfold. The calm authority of Steven Seagal, the Rolls-Royce arriving like a herald, and the manager shrinking under the weight of humility. Discussions flooded comment sections. Some praised Steven's composure. Others debated the manager's actions. Across continents, people were captivated by a story that combined drama, justice, and dignity in a single, unforgettable moment. News outlets picked it up. Headlines read, "Steven Seagal teaches arrogant manager a lesson in respect, and how a calm presence trumps arrogance." Steven Seagal's viral lesson. Clips of the Rolls-Royce, the confrontation, and the manager's reaction circulated on television and online news channels, bringing a dramatic, real-life lesson in humility to millions. The manager, once confident and dismissive, now faced consequences that extended beyond his personal embarrassment. His reputation among colleagues and patrons was impacted, and he quickly realized that arrogance and disrespect have far-reaching effects. For him, the lesson was more than public humiliation. It was an enduring reminder that authority without respect is meaningless. Meanwhile, Steven's wife felt vindicated, but not in the way of triumph or pride. She felt relief and gratitude, relief that her husband handled the situation with dignity, and gratitude that respect had been restored without chaos or violence. The lesson was delivered, and everyone who witnessed it, in person or online, felt the impact. The viral videos sparked discussions worldwide. Social media users commented on the subtle power of quiet authority, debating how influence and presence can command respect more effectively than anger or confrontation. Inspirational pages shared the story as an example of handling injustice gracefully. Motivational speakers referenced it in presentations, highlighting the importance of composure and timing. For Steven Seagal, the outcome wasn't about attention or fame. He didn't post the videos himself, and he didn't gloat. His lesson had been delivered in the simplest, most powerful way possible, through presence, timing, and undeniable authority. The Rolls-Royce had only been a symbol. The true impact came from how he handled the situation, with calm, strategic decisiveness. Even the patrons and staff who had witnessed the event in person carried the lesson with them. It became a story retold for weeks in the city. Friends recounted the tension, the humbling moment, and the way the scene had unfolded without a single raised voice. It was a reminder that power and influence, when exercised thoughtfully, can correct injustice without creating further conflict. And for the viewers online, the story carried an important message. Respect is earned, arrogance has limits, and composure can achieve what rage never can. Millions were inspired not just by the spectacle of the Rolls-Royce or Steven Seagal's fame, but by the quiet dignity and strategic presence he had demonstrated. The story closed with a clear takeaway. Authority must be tempered with respect. Arrogance is fragile, and sometimes the most memorable lessons are the ones taught quietly, deliberately, and with unwavering composure. If you believe that respect should never be ignored, type respect in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more jaw-dropping stories that inspire and amaze. In the end, the incident became more than a viral moment. It became a lesson, a story, and a source of inspiration. A simple act of injustice had transformed into a worldwide example of how dignity, composure, and presence can change minds, influence behavior, and leave an unforgettable mark on everyone who witnesses it. The manager learned humility, patrons learned awe, and the world learned that sometimes calm and control are more powerful than chaos and anger. Steven Seagal had taught a timeless lesson, and it would echo far beyond the city streets, across the internet, and into the minds of millions who saw it unfold.